In 2024, Mike from Darker Days Radio made a pilgrimage to the International Cryptozoology Museum. Located in the modern glass and steel outskirts of Portland, Maine, this museum is a mecca to the weird and the paranormal. What he found within astounded him: dodo replicas, no less than 3 Mothmans, a cryptid beer collection, and the holy grail of all, a plaster casting of Bigfoot scat. Mike left the museum with a new, profound understanding of the paranormal, but also a new direction for podcasting. But he couldn't do this alone. He needed others to help him bring the truth to light. 2 other true believers who had sleuth for scat. Together with the psychic crystal and the half-man, half-thylacine sand chigger, they formed the best cryptid hunters this side of the Rocky Mountains. Together, they're called the Squatch Squad. Okay, here we are for the first ever Squatch Squad meeting, where we are going to discuss one of the most important creatures in all of North America. An important creature in the history of the United States. The Bigfoot. The big one. I can't wait. But joining me, of course, I am Mike, speaking in the third person before, but here we have our real detectives here. First off, we have Crystal. Crystal,
hello.
How are you? Are you excited to talk about this today?
I am doing well, and I am stoked.
Good. I mean, this is a very important thing we're discussing, not just for the frivolous pursuit of role-playing games, but also for the education of Darker Days listeners.
Absolutely. I'm all about the education.
Indeed. And also joining us is, of course, Chigg, who is scouting things out in the hotbed of sightings, Texas.
It's great to be here tonight. Crystal is stoked. I am pumped to talk Bigfoot.
Incredible. I think actually, before we get started, I think we all need to come clean. Has any of us ever seen a Bigfoot or possibly big feet?
Only when I tie my shoes.
No, and I'm very angry about it.
Fair enough. Well, I did see a statue in the Cryptozoology Museum. It was really
I have
tall.
seen that, yeah.
Yeah, that was the thing. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. I just thought this would be kind of a cool episode to do because people have always kind of joked about it. And of course, Darker Days was a World of Darkness podcast. And there was always the joke about the Yeti, the Isolation role-playing game as being like the next thing that White Wolf would come out with. So I thought this would be kind of cool just to take a look at this and see what we could figure out and extrapolate in the frivolous pursuit of role-playing games. So I'll kick us off a little bit by describing what Bigfoot is, because a lot of people know, but maybe some people don't too much. We have a lot of listeners that are international, and it might be good to just give them a little bit of an introduction on the description of what this cryptid is. And I'm going to try to do this in the most efficient way possible, which is in the format of the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Monsters Compendium. So, of course, we start off with a physical description. This is a furry, bipedal ape or human-like creature, allegedly between 6 and 15 feet tall. It has either glowing eyes or an eye shine, kind of similar to a cat. They have footprints with 5 toes, which can be up to 3 times the size of a human's. Sometimes, of course, they do have kind of clawed marks, but other times they don't. So that is a bit of a mystery. Maybe some of them just need to clip their nails more often. Their scat pellets are the size of chicken eggs, so pretty big. And observers allege a potent stench coming from the creatures, somewhere between a skunk and garbage.
I like to think that they're just naturally kind of blurry, which is why they turn out that way in photos. That's just a personal theory of mine, though.
There is actually a theory behind that, and that's actually a little bit later.
Oh my gosh.
Spoilers.
I know,
Well,
right?
I mean, I was about to say, Chig, that's a genius theory, but the fact that someone else has already theorized upon this is really intriguing. Let's also talk about the behavior and habitat, because the behavior of this alleged creature kind of varies wildly. I think starting off, and this tended to be the original kind of behavior type that was really mentioned, was that of the isolationist. So in many stories and tales, the Bigfoots merely want to be left alone. Despite this, they would be pretty fiercely territorial at times. For example, they would crisscross fallen trees as kind of like boundary markers to their territory. Sometimes they would beat their fists on large trees or even throw stones at passersby or people that were trespassing on what they thought was their home. As time went on, some of the stories took a bit of a different tact, wherein they actually might be helping hikers by throwing rocks at predators or leaving berries while the lost person was asleep. Likewise, there are stories of residents who have a Bigfoot nearby their property who leave them like treats and food gifts, hoping that the Bigfoot will kind of like help protect them and keep their home safe. But of course, alongside this, there's a lot of stories about more savage aggressors. So Bigfoots, or other large, furry humanoids, have been reported to attack miners, loggers, or even hikers. For example, in 1924, a bunch of gold prospectors near Mount St. Helens were attacked by these kind of stone throwing ape like creatures, which reported damage to their cabin and at least one injury. And this Monsters Compendium entry wouldn't be complete without some special abilities. So one thing we want to talk about is Bigfoot calls, because there's been a lot of recordings that are alleged to actually be of the Bigfoot. These vary quite a bit. Some of them are kind of like growls, some are more like yips and yelps, and they are on a kind of spectrum which many claim could not be replicated by a human. So what I think we're going to do right now is play a couple of those clips and then have a little discussion of that. I'm sorry for some of the kind of rugged audio quality of those, but they're really quite terrifying. And some, of course, you heard the one where there's just these kind of deep booms off in the distance. That's a very peculiar one, but some of the kind of growling between the two of them, kind of exemplifying some of the interplay, the social interplay that these animal beings have. I shouldn't say animals, beings, is really quite striking, and I think could be a very good inspiration for tabletop role playing games. You can actually take these and maybe put them into your game if you want to use a Sasquatch, a Bigfoot, a Yeti, a skunk ape, anything like that. What do you two think?
I mean, some of those calls were chilling, terrifying. If I was alone out in the woods, I wouldn't want to hear that coming after me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm not so sure that it's unreproducible by humanity, all of it, but yeah, some of it was pretty freaky.
So, oh, sorry.
Well,
Um,
please go ahead, Crystal. I'd love to hear your insight into this.
one of the things that I always think about is that I grew up in Wisconsin, and we go up into the northern woods in Wisconsin, and there are a lot of like really big animals, and we have bear up there. We have sometimes we'll have wildcat, like cougars and stuff like that, and you get. I'm not gonna say you get used to the sound because it's like me hearing coyotes still freaks the hell out of me. Um, and like hearing the Bigfoot calls, I'm like, I've never heard anything like that, and like a lot of the big cats and the bears and stuff sound very similar to each other. And like, it's weird. It's it's
Mm.
different from what I've heard.
Yes, yeah, pretty crazy. And I was just before this recording, I was doing a little bit of research into the Alaskan Killer Bigfoot show that was on Discovery Plus, which I think is a little detrimental to the mythology of Bigfoot. But there was a clip where one of the hunters, a survivalist, was out in the woods alone with his night vision, and he says that he heard the Bigfoot whispering to him, which I think is quite chilling. Unfortunately, the audio was not caught on his camera, and we didn't hear anything through his lapel microphone. But I think something like that is truly terrifying.
To be fair, if I was alone in the forest and anything started whispering at me, my first thought would not be, oh, I better turn on my microphone, make sure I'm catching this. My first thought would be, oh no, I crapped my pants and I ran away real fast. But that's just me.
Of course, the Bigfoot as well has a special ability, which is super strength. There's stories of these beings ripping out entire tree trunks, and throwing them, using them to block trails, anything like that, pushing over large boulders and stones. So clearly that's something that we need to take note of. I see as well.
And causing avalanches too.
Yeah. In the case of like the Yeti, of course, that's certainly something to be careful of. I see, Chigg, as well. You've listed a few of the special weaknesses here. Could you share those?
Right. So first, of course, they have a special weakness against fire because they're covered in oily hair, so they're going to burn, and they're going to smell horrible the whole entire time while they're on fire. So
yeah.
Keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Second special weakness that you might not think about: photography. If a Bigfoot is seen and captured on film, it will be defeated utterly and be forced to leave the area, never again to be seen. So that's why you never see the same Bigfoot in the same area twice.
Really? So if you are able to photograph them, there's basically like a bane on that area. It's like a circle of protection Bigfoot appears.
Basically. And they're just
Wow.
there's nothing they can do about it, unfortunately. It's a weakness, just inherent in being a Bigfoot.
Incredible. We've talked about some descriptions of it, but what are the theories behind this being? There's so many of them that have developed over the years, and they go in all sorts of different directions. So I think the most basic theory about what the Bigfoot could be is the Homo sapien ancestor theory. So some believe that Bigfoots they're either a missing link in the evolutionary chain of humans, from going from monkeys up to what we are today, or maybe they're actually a separate branch of primate, kind of like the Neanderthals, which, as it happens, are still extant in the woods of North America today. In fact, in 2012, a veterinary lab studying Bigfoot DNA evidence claimed that they had determined that Bigfoots were actually a branch off of Homo sapiens, which kind of separated off 15,000 years ago. And then these crossed with another form of primate to create the Bigfoot that we know today. And I think that's just incontrovertible right there.
Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah. I don't know what they were testing. Maybe it's the scat.
Do you get a lot of DNA in scat? I mean, I guess you get some, but I don't know. I wouldn't expect that there's that much.
I would assume you get a lot of DNA because that's all cell, like.
But is it
cell waste and
is
stuff?
It from what they
from
ate?
What you eat, yeah,
or from them? You have to be very careful about how you separate it out.
I mean, they have enough. It's the size of a chicken egg, so they're fine. They can go back for more.
Yeah. Indeed. Yeah, so it's very interesting, and this concept that they're actually a branch off of humans and that they are sentient has led to many advocacy groups in the United States saying that Bigfoots should actually get either First Nation status, in like Canada, or Native American tribal status in the United States and associated benefits, which I think would be great because that will eventually lure out the Bigfoots, and we'll be able to see them at like the DMV and stuff.
I would actually be all for that, to be totally honest. If only because uh it might actually lead to more indigenous rights and indigenous equity. Could you imagine Bigfoots protesting?
Yeah, I don't think that they'd be too happy with like deforestation, for instance.
Mm.
Right?
Indeed. Well, we'll get into indigenous rights in a little bit, I think, because I kind of wanted to talk a little bit as well about Native American theories. There are a lot of tales from the various First Nations and Native American tribes, which tell of beings quite similar to what people classify as Bigfoot today. So, Crystal, I see you've got one right here from the Lakota.
I do.
If you'd like to share that.
Yeah. Okay. So first, I want to preface this by saying we are white people. Please go and check out actual like indigenous creators and storytellers who talk about this stuff. But to give some background and like just a starting point, the Lakota and Chakota have a being that they have in their lore that is said to protect the forest, and they call it Chietanka. If I am not pronouncing that correctly, I apologize. I've listened to the video several times to try and get it. But they say that this protector can actually teleport, which is where you can't actually photograph it because it's teleporting as you are photographing it, which is really, really very interesting. It can also read your minds, so it knows that if you are looking for it. So if you see it, it is because it chooses to let you see it.
Hmm.
And so Chietanka often will protect those from the tribes that it follows or feels familiarity with from danger when being lost in the woods. And if you go to almost any social media, the story told by Stephanie Big Eagle about this particular one is about one of her family members, so you should hear it from her. But it's very interesting to hear her talk about Chietanka and what they did to protect one of her family members.
Ooh. Yeah, we'll definitely link that in the show notes. That sounds like a really interesting story. And just the few notes we have here about this really interconnect with a lot of other theories and ideas that we're going to talk about today. So this is really cool, like the teleportation, reading minds, and the like. Yeah, that plays into a lot of things. Another example of a similar creature in First Nations and Native American culture is it comes from the Alutiiq people, which tells of a large bipedal creature called the Nantinak. This being is fully furred to survive the icy islands off of Alaska's coast and close to Vancouver as well. The native peoples believe that this being is a spirit of nature, essentially like a peaceful being in equilibrium with the world. However, there's been this weird thing that popped up on the internet a couple years back where there was a tale that purported that in 1940, a Nantinak attacked the village of Portlock, which was just like a fishing village off the coast of Alaska, and that sent the population fleeing, leaving this entire place a ghost town. Everything's been left behind. There's even been a Discovery Plus reality TV series and several tourist expeditions to this place, but it's pretty obvious just by looking over history and stuff that this whole Portlock Nantinak attack has been determined to be completely fake. This is a total fabrication that somebody just made up for like a creepypasta or something. But Crystal's information from before and my own little research into this, and listening to other discussions of this cryptid, has really got me thinking about how it seems like Bigfoot, to me at least, has a real association, or maybe I should say like a parallel between white American guilt about Native Americans, which has caused this kind of cultural resonance around the Bigfoot. And, this can take a lot of different ideas. This idea that there's this other sentient creature out there and you're kind of living on their land or encroaching on their territory. The ideas of isolation, trying to stay away from the colonizers in the area. The helpfulness as well. Sometimes they can be a compassionate, sentient creature that may help out those in need, which is seen in history, especially with like early colonists sometimes, as for how the Native Americans assisted people when they came to this continent, but also the aggression as well, which can be a very sensitive subject as well when you start comparing it to Native American history. And I think it's kind of interesting that this Nantinak myth was appropriated in this way. And it's kind of like a footnote of how people on the internet might use something, this kind of mythic being from this one particular culture to kind of justify a cryptid or add to a cryptid mythology, which eventually even turns into a reality TV show. Another thing I was kind of thinking about as well is how this kind of relationship between treatment of Native Americans by people in the United States, in this country, as well as Canada's treatment, and how with Bigfoot these days, there's also this kind of like toxic masculinity among hunters where they are vowing that they're going to try to hunt and kill Bigfoot to prove it exists. That's how they're not going to use science. They're not going to use, observation like birding or something like that, looking through binoculars or cameras. They're actually just going to go out and try to murder this thing, which I think is quite telling with some of the kind of cultural backlash we see, at least in the United States, with how we treat Native American rights. So that's my political statement of the episode, kind of, and a little bit rambling, but it's something that's really just been sticking in the back of my mind. And I'm not sure if you two, Chigg and Crystal, have similar opinions or insight of your own.
So I agree fully that as white people, we should be investigating like connections to indigenous cultures, if only to just recognize that some of these stories come from there, and they might have been changed depending on the audience. When it comes to like these TV shows, recognizing that this is like those are super harmful to the indigenous community and to their lore and to the land, and that hunters don't actually do that. Like if you understand what actual hunting is, it's not like big game hunting. It's understanding your place within the cycle of life and how what you take helps in the long run for things like herd size and survival rates and stuff like that. If you don't understand that, you shouldn't be hunting things. And if you're trying to hunt a myth to kill it, or hunt something like this to kill it, you're not part of any sort of scientific community. You're part of a problem.
Indeed, yeah, really great points. I think another thing that I want to point out with the Bigfoot myth is that, and I don't know if this is directly related, it's just a coincidence, but is that coincidence? Is that anecdote data? I'm not sure. But when did Bigfoot really start getting popular? When did a lot of the tales start coming out? It was kind of like in the late 1960s. That's when it really kicked off.
Mm-hmm.
And when did the indigenous rights movement within civil rights really kick off? Exact same time. So I really do wonder about that. Native peoples in this country, in Canada as well, all over North America, have a really difficult time, and I could easily see people kind of coming up with these stories to kind of help discount them or just take some of the spotlight away from them. And I kind of feel like sometimes that's what some of these Bigfoot stories mean.
I mean, I think that it's also a way of maybe assuaging some guilt. Hey, yeah, okay, so maybe our ancestors came in here and murdered just a lot of people, just a whole lot. But look, there's these other people over here that are hiding. That they're fine. They're fine. They're out there. Go look. You'll find them. Go on, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
that's a really interesting point, Chig. Yeah. Anyway, I'm sure a lot of people have done some really serious like scholarship and thinking about this, and this is just my half baked theory from like the past 2 hours. So definitely something to look into and something to consider in the future. But I think that's enough with the heavy stuff. Do you two want to get back to some of the fun things?
Oh yeah.
Do you want to talk about
absolutely.
interdimensional beings? All right, buckle up. We're getting into UFOs. So there have been multiple reported extraterrestrial contacts that have linked UFOs to Bigfoot. Purportedly, Bigfoot is actually beings from another world, another planet that was destroyed, and their free floating souls came to Earth and were spliced into these ape like creatures, which developed a modicum of sentience and evolved into the Bigfoot of today. Since these beings are half disembodied soul, they're able to shift between dimensions, which means they can just vanish in an instant, which makes them so hard to catch on camera. And probably if they're making that phasing, if they're stepping sideways, if you will, that might be why they're so blurry in a lot of those photographs.
Yeah, that's actually what I was hinting at earlier. Is yeah, the interdimensional like stepping absolutely would
Hmm.
be something connected with that.
So they're not naturally blurry, they're supernaturally blurry.
Precisely.
Yes.
And this whole concept reminds me of an event that happened at Skinwalker Ranch. It was something that I think we covered on a previous episode. I think we did one, a secret frequency on Skinwalker. And as the story goes, there were these two scientists that were observing Skinwalker Ranch at night. One had night vision goggles, the other one did not. And in the distance, the one with night vision saw this circular light appear, and it had this large, dark, muscular humanoid that was crawling out of it. And after it struggled to its feet, the being vanished into the woods. The scientist's colleague, who didn't have the goggles, was kind of kept abreast of the situation, but he couldn't see with his own physical eyes any light, any portal, any dark being. Yeah, so pretty creepy. Is it evidence?
That's yeah, that's weird.
Yeah. Unfortunately, this was the early 2000s, so at that time they just had goggles. They didn't have like a night vision camera or anything, so they were unfortunately
Uh,
not able to get any evidence. But these two, well, this one and his colleagues swear that this is the events that occurred.
And
huh.
unfortunately, the goggles, they do nothing.
Oh man,
But
what a
yes,
cultural throwback.
we did cover that in episode 104 from March 22nd, 2019. Faithful listeners will remember.
Oh yeah, classic one, classic.
Kind of wish that we would have had recording of that. That would have been cool.
So, another theory that I'd like to toss out there is the greatest ape theory. Much like the missing link idea listed previously, this theory states that the Sasquatch is another great ape. If that were true, of course, this would be the only great ape native to the Americas. The last non human primate on the continent was a small lemur like creature that went extinct several million years ago. It would be odd if this were the case, as there would presumably be some sort of fossil evidence of this branch of the evolutionary tree. But we're not here to talk science, we're here to talk Squatch. So, by this theory, the Sasquatch is a relative on the Tree of Life, possibly descended from ancient lemurs, a cousin, but not an ancestor of mankind.
Yeah, definitely interesting. Kind of ties into the Homo sapien ancestor theories that we had before. Two things with this, Chig. So one is that the no evidence thing reminds me of how there was a theory that came out, and I think the 1970s, like a book was published. This is over in the UK, where there are cryptozoologists who look for dragons. For example, they think dragons are flying out there, breathing fire and stuff, stealing cattle, hoarding gold. But why don't we see any of their bones? Well, this guy had it. He said that when a dragon dies, its bones turn to dust, right? Because fire turns to ash to dust. Boom. So maybe there's a similar thing with this great ape. Maybe its bones are much more hollow, like a bird, for example, and that's why they decay so much faster. We don't have them like we have evidence of, say, the the great giant sloth, which used to roam North America.
Even further back than the lemurs.
Even further back. Yeah. So the other thing, Chig, is I saw you list this in here, so I was like, oh, okay, I'm curious about this. I'm going to try to like look it up, do a little bit of research, and what Wikipedia brought me to, Chig and Crystal, is the stoned ape theory, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but it's the theory that Homo sapiens evolved from the previous, evolutionary stage towards humanity, because that previous stage started eating tons of mushrooms and getting a little funkadelic, and that is what helped our brains expand and evolve to the current state that we're in today.
So we're just evolutionary brain tripping.
Yeah, it really opens up your third eye.
I mean that actually kind of explains a lot of like the people who do like mushrooms and stuff like that and their experiences with everything that they perceive that isn't actually there. I could see that.
Yeah, unfortunately, not sure how that causes evolution to occur, and that's kind of why the theory is relatively discounted. But sure, there can
Oh
definitely
yeah.
be some cultural development and
Hey,
movement on
if
that
I've
tech
learned
tree.
anything from Pokemon, it's that if you give certain creatures enough of a certain substance, they will evolve.
Irrefutable, irrefutable.
So we're just Pokemon evolutions from Sasquatch.
Not necessarily from Sasquatch, but not not necessarily either. Or maybe Sasquatch is an evolution from us because they're out there in the forest eating all the lovely greeneries and the mushrooms. All right, we
They're
cracked it. Sasquatch is just a super stoned hippie who needs a shave. You got
are
it.
they hashtag evolution goals?
Yes. Hashtag beard goals, hashtag evolution goals.
Actually, another thing I read about was apparently up in the Emerald Triangle in California, where I did a whole bunch of work years ago. Apparently, that area had a lot of like Sasquatch sightings. It was primarily by people working in the marijuana uh, farms, like the illicit ones at that time. I don't know. They just had lots of claims that they were like attacked, and they're really paranoid about it. I don't know why.
Total coincidence. Could
Total
be
coinky
anything.
dink.
That's actually really interesting.
Yeah, we can link that in the show notes. People can check that one out. The last interesting one that I kind of wanted to bring up was the Dark Watchers. And apparently, in the early 16th century, a lot of Spanish explorers and settlers down in Mexico would write about how they were stalked by these large, hairy humanoids, which they called Los Vigilantes Obscuros. These so-called dark watchers would, stalk around their camps, sneak in at night when people were asleep to steal livestock, and then out in the distance they would scream loudly in what some people claim is quite similar to the Bigfoot calls of today that we've have recordings of. However, intriguingly, none of these reportedly ever attacked humans. I think that's all
Well,
we got
that's
for
fair.
theories. Let's talk about as well some Bigfoot relatives, because there's a lot of similar ones from different parts of North America and elsewhere in the world. So, Chig, why don't you go first?
All right, first thing we're going to bring up is the skunk ape. The Momo, which is short for Missouri Monster. MO, for those of you who are unaware, is the abbreviation for the state of Missouri because the United States has way too many states that begin with M. So Missouri is abbreviated MO. So Momo, Missouri Monster, was a creature reported in Missouri in the early 1970s. Witnesses described the creature as a 7-foot tall, hairy beast with a head the size of a pumpkin and glowing orange eyes, who smelled absolutely disgusting. Even from a great distance where the observers were standing, they could smell this creature before they could see it. When it was first encountered, it was seen holding a dead dog, which could be a long lost pet, maybe a snack, perhaps the real source of the smell. Dead creatures don't smell great. But subsequent witnesses do not include the dead animal in the description. A 20-man hunting party was formed to track the creature down, but despite looking for many days, they were unable to find any trace of it.
Suspicious, suspicious. Chig, I've heard of research indicating that certain parts of the deep south in the United States have a climate that would be sufficient to support escaped gorillas. So perhaps this could be a gorilla or an ape merely living out in the wilderness, or perhaps it's its own creature itself.
I like to think of it as a Bigfoot cousin.
Could be, could be. Now, this tale as well does bring up a interesting. You kind of allude to perhaps a relationship between this creature and the dog itself. Now, I've heard stories about dogs going crazy, barking a whole lot when a purported Bigfoot is near. But how do we know they don't actually get along? These are sentient creatures that are out here in the wilderness. Maybe dogs may actually learn to like them.
Maybe. I mean,
Uh,
I think that
I'm-
the big reason that dogs go crazy, reportedly when Bigfoot are around, is because of the smell. We've mentioned it a couple of
Yeah.
times. Bigfoot reportedly do not smell pleasant to people. Dogs, of course, have a stronger sense of smell than people. So if there is something around that smells unpleasant, dogs are going to notice it first. And when they notice it, they are going to want to do something about it, want to investigate it, want to chase it away. If it's a dog like one that I had growing up, want to roll around in it and bring the smell home for everybody else to enjoy.
That's a thing.
It's a
Yeah.
gift for the whole family.
I would actually say I wouldn't want dogs to not be afraid of it, only because that is a predator prey reaction, and dogs end up being prey for a lot of predators. I would much rather my dog be vigilant and bark at things it doesn't know than like get taken by a coyote or something. It would be awesome if the dog could recognize the difference between a wolf, a coyote, and dogman. But since it can't, even if the dogman isn't going to cause harm to my dog, I would still want it to be on its toes for the other two things that would definitely eat it given the chance.
Yeah, a false positive is less dangerous to the dog than a false negative.
Great points, everyone. Great points. So, speaking of, and this is kind of a great tie-in to our next Bigfoot relative, we've got dogmen. So, dogmen are a relatively new phenomenon in cryptozoology, and they've taken the U.S. by storm. They have sightings which have increased exponentially since 1987, which have spread out from an origin point in Michigan. And they're pretty much seen in all parts of the United States now. These are either quadrupedal or bipedal creatures with rippling muscles and the heads of dogs. And supposedly, these dogmen were created by the U.S. government to be used as super soldiers. And they were, of course, inspired by the power of Bigfoot. But now, somehow, they are loose in the United States. They're attacking civilians at random. They like to, attack people that are in cars trying to drive by. And bizarrely, I've read up on a few dogmen encounters, and victims of these dogmen really just want to discuss the very large sex organs of these dogmen. I do not understand the fascination. I don't know why they always bring it up.
That's okay, Mike. You don't have to.
Not everything is for you, Mike.
They talk about this a whole lot, and I don't know. It makes me remember, was it like a Monster Squad where the kid kicks Wolfman and he's like, Wolfman's got nards. Maybe that's where it came from. I don't know. Maybe that's just what they're into.
That's not where that came from, Mike, and it's okay. It's those that
Yeah,
know
are
know.
you on the internet, Mike? I have to ask for our listeners
don't
because I
think
know
he
they're
is.
curious.
I'm on Book Talk, and I can tell you exactly why, but that's not the point of this podcast.
Okay.
It's okay. It's okay, Mike. It's that's
Crystal
probably
will
something that.
explain it to you when you're older.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right,
No,
great.
no, I don't want the conversation with Mike. That would be so awkward.
Crystal has been volunteered to explain it to you when you're older.
I'm so sorry, Mike.
Okay. I don't know, Dogman, kind of interesting. Any other thoughts about them?
I just want to point out that this was literally a plot point in later seasons of the television series Dark Angel, starring Jessica Alba, Fridays on Fox.
Were there actually dogmen super soldiers?
So the basic plot is Jessica Alba plays a genetically engineered super soldier who escaped the government or non-government facility that created her and is now living as an unhoused person who has no identity officially. So like she can't get a job or anything. So yes, they send other genetically engineered super soldiers to try to track her down and bring her back. And at one point, one of the other escapees turns out to be a literal dog man, a man who is part dog and looks very canid in his appearance. So for those of you who haven't seen it, strong recommendo. Dark Angel,
Yeah.
which I haven't
I
seen
tried
in
to watch.
25 years. It might not hold up.
Yeah, I tried to watch it, and it wasn't that the plot was bad. It was that thing with like 90s post-apocalyptic TV shows where like things just look like too bright and clean.
It
You
wasn't
know,
post-apocalyptic. It was dystopian because it was
dystopian.
20
Okay,
minutes in
sure.
the future after, the government and the corporations crack down on the little man.
Yeah. But it's one of those things, like same thing with like Jeremiah, where like it's supposed to be like, this dystopia, but like everything's just like too clean. They just like got junk like brand new out of the box and just piled it up, and you're like, oh, okay. I don't know.
Hey man, not everything can be Max Headroom, all right?
I know. Not everything can be that. Not everything can be Fallout.
I have a feeling that like Dogman might actually be like a crossover episode of Sasquatch and like werewolves or goatmen or something like that.
Yeah.
It feels like it's like two myths smashed into one just to make it easier for storytelling. And with the whole sex organ thing, it might just be more palatable for an audience that would be interested in that.
Indeed.
That's going to be my guess, is that it's just a little bit more palatable all around compared to some of the other things that are connected to it.
Chris, do you want to share the final Bigfoot relative with us?
So, as someone who comes from the frozen tundra, Yeti are one of the versions of Bigfoot that I have actually really enjoyed, even as like a young kid. So the Yeti or the Migo come from Himalayan folklore and specifically Tibetan entomology. They are generally taller, with like some of the smaller ones being 8 feet and all the way up to 15 feet tall. And they have lore that goes all the way into Siberia. So it kind of crosses that whole top portion of Russia and Tibet and the Himalayan mountain chain. One of the things that like everybody kind of sees, like remembers like the abominable snowman and may have seen like the claymation abominable snowman and stuff like that. And that's kind of where all of that is coming from, is from the Yeti. The Yeti often, they are very, very territorial. They don't like people in their area. And so they often will throw snow, like snowballs, or start avalanches to get you out of their area. They'll also throw rocks and trees to scare them off. And
Hmm.
many people, like many of the indigenous folklorists in those areas, will say that if you are hearing or seeing things thrown at you, like rocks or pebbles or anything like that, that that's a warning. And if you don't heed that warning, there is a good chance that you are going to disappear. Heed the warnings if you're out in those areas. If you're getting stuff thrown at you through the trees, pay attention, head back, go back to safety, go away from wherever you are. It's not worth it. And then uh, for sightings and stuff like that, they're seen at great distances. So a lot of times it's really hard to tell exactly how tall they are. I know I've seen like videos and stuff like that of distances of people going, oh, there's giant people in mountains and stuff like that. And you'll see like this giant walking in the distance and then like closing the side of a mountain, like a door, which is kind of funny to see. But that is part of giant slash Yeti lore. And then also their footprints have been discovered. And again, they're huge. And they're generally, you only see them in the snow though. So getting foot castings of them is a little harder.
Ooh, yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, you can't get the foot castings because it's in snow. Oh.
Yeah. And so, connections to Wisconsin is that one of the first Yeti sightings or first things that I remember seeing or getting into it was actually from Wisconsin, and it was in 2006 in November. At that time, before climate change started hitting our state pretty hard, it was November tended to be very snowy and very, very cold. And so it was pretty close to what Yeti might be used to. A worker in one of the areas that I used to actually teach at, not at that time, but recently, had a deer carcass stolen off the back of his truck by something. And he reported it to the police. The police reported it as like either Bigfoot or a Yeti stealing it off the back of a truck. And then because it got that type of attention from law enforcement, news reporters started taking it and going wild. And it actually went national. Like it was part of national news.
Yeah. So did the worker say that it was Bigfoot? Or did the cops just say it?
I think the cops actually did. He described it as just like something really large and hairy walking on 2 feet. Like that's all the description he gave, which if you know bear too, bear can walk on 2 feet. And they are pretty large and hairy. And there are
Indeed.
bear in that area, so
Yeah, and I think bears have eye shine, right?
they do have eye shine, I think.
I'm gonna look this
Hold
up.
on. That's I thought
We're
they
doing this
did.
live.
I know, right? I'm fairly certain
Yes.
they do.
Yellow or orange glow.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah. A lot of animals do. Oh my gosh, this is a scary. Okay, I'm closing this.
I'm sorry. Is it the picture of the Yeti that I sent? I'm sorry.
No.
I didn't mean to startle you.
Yeah, that brought me back some PTSD from playing Windows 95 games. Chigg.
I mean, yeah.
Pretty peculiar. Yeah, and kind of a crazy story about that guy. Anything else that Chigg wants to mention about the Yeti?
Of course, the Yeti is mentioned by H.P. Lovecraft in his story *The Whisperer in Darkness*. They are definitely Migo, which is a race of alien crab-like beings who are made out of fungus and currently live in Pluto. They fly here on their giant Yeti wings for mining purposes. Sounds exactly like a Yeti, obviously.
Yeah, this always was just completely bizarre to me.
I think
Everything is
maybe
always evolving
Lovecraft didn't know
towards
what a Yeti
crabs.
was.
Yeah, I don't know. He's just maybe just saw the word in a book. He's like, oh, I'll just use that. Yeah. No one will ever back check this. No one will ever learn anything about. The
I hope
polyculture,
he's
Tibetan
rolling in his
culture.
grave for
Yeah,
many reasons.
indeed, indeed. Yeah. I know. Yeah, it's wild. Yep. Okay. So big furry humanoids are actually crabs. Yep. Wait. So they're
It's
just crab people in the suits, right? It's
well,
just like
no,
that South Park episode.
everything is evolving towards crabs.
Yeah, it's carcinization of Bigfoot. Yeah.
All right, but enough of the facts. Let's get to the horror role playing games, and let's figure out a little bit about how we can use Bigfoot or these other creatures in horror RPGs. And this is an interesting one. I've struggled with this for a really long time. I've thought about doing a Bigfoot episode for like, I don't know, a decade, and it's not easy to use. This is a very isolationist creature, and we're talking about World of Darkness, even Call of Cthulhu. They're very much focused on humans and human interaction. So having this being that just tries to stay away makes it a little difficult to bring in. Not great for social aspects, for combat. Sure, like Alternity Dark Matter had a stat block if you wanted to fight a Bigfoot. So yeah, you can do that, sure. And then for the investigation route, well, you need to like use a bunch of ideas. You have to figure out how to use those story seeds and grow them into a great game session, which I've never really been able to do that well. But I think with Chigg here and Crystal as well, I think we can put our heads together and come up with some great ideas.
I think one of the things that people often forget is the fact that they do need to do a little bit of actual investigation before going off into the woods to search for Bigfoot. So things like tracking down people who have seen it, even talking like to local people, local farmers. Farmers are like one of the biggest things that have their pulse on like the animals in that area because they have to protect their herds. So they have to know the animals that are in that area. And then uh, what happens when the person who, saw the thing is now super annoyed because everybody is trying to follow him or trying to track him down. I know, like a real life example, the guy in Wisconsin actually had people calling his job to interview him to the point of where like they almost fired him for it. So don't do that if you're actually doing like the cryptozoologist thing. But in a game aspect, that could be something that you could play out.
The Wisconsin example that you cited is pretty interesting, and that could be a good starting point. Clearly there's games like Hunt of the Vigil, for example, Hunt of the Reckoning as well, wherein
Yeah.
I think with Vigil, I'd probably use this guy as someone they meet years down the line. He's lost his job. He's kind of maybe not destitute, but clearly suffered for it. And that could be interesting juxtaposition wherein the hunters are kind of interviewing him, trying to get this information years later to help
Yep.
out with their hunt. Clearly, I wouldn't use this for Bigfoot. I'd use it for some other sort of paranormal, supernatural creature or something like that in that game. But certainly got some good ideas there. As for Bigfoot being chased, that's interesting. I'm trying to think of how we could use that in a game. Because clearly there's going to be other factions competing to find this being.
That might be a good one for like werewolf
Oh yeah, there we go.
because you have
Yeah,
to jump into
yeah.
the veil and stuff like that.
Indeed, and I kind of alluded this with Stepping Sideways before, but with both werewolf games, Apocalypse and Forsaken, it's kind of interesting to have this other creature that could perhaps be stepping sideways into the Umbra. Perhaps half some sort of soul being, in the same way that werewolves in those games tend to be very spiritual and like half spirit, for example, in Werewolf the Forsaken. Yeah, I kind of struggle with like having werewolves talk to Bigfoot though, and kind of coming up with a good idea for what this creature is doing. I find challenging in modern horror games. For fantasy horror games, for example, I think I got some other good ideas in that context, and I think that's where I would use this idea a lot more.
Ooh, I actually have a pretty good idea. But it's gonna take some sensitivity with doing,
Sure.
mind you. But in modern horror and stuff like that, a lot of the indigenous and First Nations people are speaking out about, Bigfoot being this protector of their families and their tribes and their lands.
Hmm.
Perhaps you use that as a starting point of, hey, we're seeing Bigfoot, but we're not seeing anything happen. What is going on? So Bigfoot isn't the cause, but it is a symptom of something that is causing it.
So you're kind of thinking like, kind of like a tulpa kind of situation, sort of a thought
Yeah,
form
something
from the
like that.
community. That is an awesome idea.
Why are we seeing Bigfoot? We shouldn't be seeing him in this area, but we're seeing
Mm.
him. So something is going on.
Well, that just means Bigfoot's doing his job. If we don't know what's coming after us and we see Bigfoot, Bigfoot has completed his task of protecting us because whatever he was protecting us from, he did it. Good job, Bigfoot. Thanks. Right?
Yeah, I mean, but if you're
Mm.
seeing him too much, though, that means that something is continually happening. And then what happens when he's overpowered,
He's the hardest working Bigfoot
right?
in show business. I get it. Yeah. He's got a
Well,
lot going on.
it,
Indeed.
I mean, it's like when you have, a guardian at the gate, and you're like, the guardian's like, hey, I got this, dude, it's fine. But then, in 2 weeks after they've sent all of their scouts, now the whole army is there, and it's one dude.
Yeah, but he's a big dude. So he's got this. I believe in him. I believe in you,
Yeah, that's
Bigfoot.
that's a really cool idea. I really like this concept, and having it even be, I'm not sure if we should really use the word like totemic spirit, but that kind of a concept could be pretty cool to use in a modern game, or even historical horror. That sort of thing could be pretty good too.
So if you want to use Bigfoot in a modern horror type setting, I think you have to have Bigfoot be the bad guy. I think you have to have an isolated community where Bigfoot or a tribe of Bigfoots, for some reason, is coming to get them in the night. Nobody believes in Bigfoot. Nobody believes that Bigfoot is out there. But then this isolated community, maybe there's like a storm or something that knocks out the only road into and out of town, washes away the bridge, what have you. And the Bigfoots, they got to eat. They have, their own young to worry about. And they have to start hunting humanity. So they find this little tiny isolated community. They go into a house at night. They take the people out, bring them to the forest. Their remains are not found because Bigfoot are very good, very they use every part of the human. Um, they're efficient, and that was your next door neighbor, old widow Sanders or what have you. And there's only 4 houses left in this little community. What do you guys do to stop the Bigfoots from coming and getting the rest of you? I think that'd be an interesting game to play.
It certainly does play off of fear of the unknown, and as well, kind of, it does have a horror element since this is a purported being that we hear about, and there's stories about, oh, it's nice, oh, it just wants to be left alone. But yeah, maybe there are stories of where it is incredibly violent.
Sure, you could even have a scene in the game where somebody's like, "Oh my gosh, Bigfoot is real. I'm the first person to ever meet a Bigfoot." And they go out and they want to shake Bigfoot's hand, and Bigfoot just rips their arm off and beats him over the head with it and hauls him into the
Sure,
woods.
sure. Yeah, you could definitely do
Okay,
that.
that would be a great scene.
Come on, that's
Yeah,
a
that
great
kind of,
scene.
yeah, that's a show stealer right there, actually. So I really like that. Yeah, I remember when I was a kid. I think I was watching the Sci-Fi Channel, and I saw some sort of movie on TV where these people were just in a house in like the Pacific Northwest, like a big, big, nice house. but they're getting attacked by Sasquatches that were just like tearing their limbs off and stuff. It was pretty brutal. I didn't keep watching it, and I was trying to figure out the title of it to talk about that on this episode, but I just couldn't find the film. I think it was like really like low budget, C-rated kind of film. But yeah, similar kind of idea. So certainly for like a one-off story, that kind of thing, or maybe a couple sessions game, it could be pretty cool. So yeah, I like it, Chig. I like it. So giving some ideas for a couple of specific games, what I was thinking about, especially with that interdimensional concept, was that you could use Bigfoot or something similar in Malifaux, actually. That's a game which has, portals to another dimension all across, well, starts off with just one in North America and one in China, but then it expands to have a whole bunch of different ones. But I thought it'd be pretty cool if there were these beings. Maybe they just look like Bigfoot. Maybe there's something different. And they could portal in and out from the kind of weird world into our planet Earth. And I think that what they'd probably be trying to do is not really communicate too much, but actually just try to steal relics, maybe technology and other things from Earth. So they'd be a real nuisance for a lot of people. You're just a farmer getting up for the day and you see, oh, geez, one of those things just popped out and it's stealing my cow. Or maybe at this point, I think they had cars in Malifaux, maybe. So maybe one of them is just trying to steal a car and drive it through a portal or something. I think that kind of thing would be pretty fun. But I'm not an expert on this setting. Chig, you know a little bit more. So what do you think about that?
I love the idea of Bigfoot as interdimensional raccoon. He just shows up to
Just
steal
an
stuff.
interdimensional trash panda.
Yeah. He's not there to hurt you. The cows that they take, they're not being mistreated. They get back to whatever dimension Bigfoot's from. It's like, the farm upstate where your dog went when you were a little kid. It's great. They have other cows to run around with, plenty of grass to eat. It's fantastic. The Bigfoot isn't there as a predator so much as a collector. And they collect everything.
Yeah, really, just kind of like a nuisance, basically, which, of course, people will want to have stopped. And since you're in Malifaux, you're usually like a downtrodden, crushed, incredibly poor person being hired by like, corporations for corporate script, that sort of thing. Like you would probably be hired to try to stop them.
Yeah, they're out there stealing our plot device, and we got to stop them because we need that tractor more than Bigfoot needs that tractor, darn it. So...
See, now I imagine Bigfoot getting like cotton candy and doing like the scene with the raccoon putting it in the water.
He's got to wash it before he eats it.
Oh, poor Bigfoot.
He doesn't know how cotton candy works.
Another idea I had was Earth Dawn, which is ostensibly set in Europe in a ages far past. But you could definitely use Bigfoot for inspiration because maybe these were beings that, species that survived on the surface of Barsave during the time of horrors when magic flooded the world, but brought with it these terrible Lovecraftian beings that were trying to consume everything on the planet. Of course, they would have had their own way to disappear and to survive. However, in the current timeline, as magic begins to wane from the world, the horrors have kind of receded. That means they're losing their ability to hide from others, and their isolation is coming to an end. So that could definitely have some plots for how the player characters would be interacting with them, learning about their culture, their sources of magic, and maybe they would unfortunately get dragged into conflict with the more imperial forces of that setting.
Yeah, somebody's definitely going to try to do a colonization on the Bigfoots. 100%.
Maybe.
That's definitely going to happen. They have better, nicer magics than us, so we have to go liberate that for humanity. So in the related setting of Shadowrun, which is in the now much too close to present time here on Earth, Sasquatches are a recognized species that just kind of hid out in the woods till there was enough magic for them to come out and walk around with other people again. In the setting, they are recognized as people, just like trolls and orcs and elves and dwarves and dragons. Also, they are great musicians because of their ability to mimic sounds, and they are super allergic to pollution, which is why they didn't visit cities before there was enough magic for them to just come out and be people again.
In the context of Shadowrun, that's pretty perfect. That's really good. That's really good. I like it a lot.
Yeah, so I am currently playing a orc musician in a Shadowrun game, and one of the guys in my band is a Sasquatch. He's the drummer.
Dang, I didn't even know. That's awesome.
That's awesome.
That's wicked good. So, Chigg, the Sasquatches they never regressed back to human form. They were always their metahuman type were always out there in the woods in the setting.
Correct. They were always out there in the woods, which is why people sometimes saw them. The people that saw them, they had just a little touch of the magic in them, so that's how they were able to see them, even when there wasn't enough magic to do much of anything. But yeah, no, they weren't people who underwent genetic expression and turned into Sasquatches. They were always Sasquatches, and sometime in the early 2000s, they came out of the woods. They're like, "Hey guys, we're real. We've been here forever. Please stop cutting down our trees."
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, we have crazy magic, and if you cut down our trees anymore, we will murder you. So hey, please stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
At least they gave a warning.
Yeah, it was really nice of them. Also, there's a lot of Native American information in the Shadowrun setting. If you're interested in using Native American stuff in your games, highly recommend Shadowrun. It was written in the early 90s, so I don't know how accurate any of the information is, but they've recently, it's still a game that exists, so they've gone back, and anything that was egregiously wrong, I'm sure, has been corrected. I do not play the modern game. I play the old game.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of it is not great.
Yeah. Yeah, Chigg, which edition do you recommend?
I personally recommend 2nd or 3rd edition, which is when the game peaked. After that, but that's just my opinion. Lots of people enjoy later editions, and it's a lot easier to find the current edition, which I think is 6th. So
it is Shadowrun: The Sixth World, the 6th edition. All right. So, final game idea that I've got is regarding dogmen, and maybe we should do a future secret frequency on them, because there's a whole crazy lore that's developed, and it's some wild stuff. But to me, these creatures just scream Deviant the Renegades, having them be the foot soldiers of the conspiracies that created you. And these hunter killers, they can't be bargained with. They can't be reasoned with. They'll never stop until you're dead. And you can definitely mine some other stuff for ideas about them. There's a novel, Wolfen. There's also a movie by Whitley Strieber, which definitely has a lot of ideas for how these kinds of dog creatures could operate in a major city where your game is set, how they might reside in derelict areas, move through alleyways, creep along the river at night to find your deviant.
Are these just coalition dog boys at this point?
Oh, I guess they are. Oh my god! Wait, and they're from Michigan. They're from Michigan. That's where the coalition is.
Oh, there you go.
Sorry, didn't mean to ruin it.
It's all good.
My offering is 3 words, and I'm a little bit biased on this. I will say that openly. Is the Pip primer for cryptids? I was the developer for that. But you actually play as cryptids doing cryptid things. So it kind of turns that whole thing on its head. You definitely can play as Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, or whatever you would like in there. And you are out there just trying to redirect humans away from your stuff so that you can go and hang out with the other cryptids who you like. You can amp up stuff. So if you want to do the horror thing, you can absolutely play as the Yeti that are trying to hunt down humans and do all of that fun stuff. Or you can play as the Sasquatch trying to protect everything uh, from deforestation or anything like that, that is all options for you.
I like the idea that it's a game where you just want to hang out with your friends, but you have to do your chores first. So you're the Loch Ness monster, and you really want to hang out with Mothman, but hold on. There's some Scottish dude swimming in my lake. I got to get him out of here. Hold on, 1 minute.
You can't have your afternoon tea when you have somebody that's swimming right next to you.
You know he's peeing in the lake. You know he's peeing in.
Oh, gross!
Exactly.
Yeah.
We got to get him out of here. I love that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna plug that because I don't think there's many games out there where you can. I mean, other than now Shadowrun that I know, that you actually can play cryptids.
Oh, you can't play a Sasquatch
Like it's actually
in Shadowrun. They're NPC status only. Sorry.
Oh.
Oh,
Well,
bummer.
oh, okay. So then, like unless you do some home brewing, yeah, pip system cryptids, play as cryptids,
Chig, you're telling
doing
me
cryptid things.
in all of those books and all those source books for Shadowrun, they never gave you Sasquatch rules?
Again, I stopped playing after 3rd edition. I tried playing the later editions, did not care for them. I just about guarantee you there's rules in some later edition book where you can play a Sasquatch. But I do not know off the top of my head which book that would be.
I'm trying to. Oh, suspicious link. Don't click on that. Get me out of here. I'm trying to look this up. We're doing it live. Howdy, Cowboys. How do we do a Sasquatch Shaman? Shadow Beat. Someone says that Sasquatches should be in Shadow Beat. Missed opportunity. Yeah, I don't think there's any rules. Yeah, they never did it, as far as I can tell. Crazy. All right, so I think we need to wrap this up. We ran a little bit late, and also want to thank you both for coming in here and proving to me that there are great ideas for Bigfoot in gaming. I was worried about this. Been bothering me for years that I couldn't come up with any good ideas, but I think we all worked together and we got some good stuff. So this has been a Secret Frequency from Darker Days Radio. If you'd like to find out more about our work in horror gaming, you can check out darker-days.org. And if you'd like to get in contact with us, you can check out our link tree, which is linktree/Darker Days Radio. Go on our Discord and stuff. Or you can send us an email over at darkerdaysradio@gmail.com. And until our next Secret Frequency, good night, good luck, and stay safe out there. This has been an episode of Darker Days Radio. Special thanks to Occam's Laser for the intro, outro, and new bumper music from their hit album, 9 Circles. Check out the rest of their work at occamslaser.bandcamp.com.
I hope
All right.
that is this music stinger that you leave.